I was diagnosed with autism age 12. A year prior to that, I dropped out of public school in the fifth grade. And after my diagnosis, I ultimately became pretty much a societal recluse for the next 12 years.
Thank you so much for joining me. You are an autism advocate, motivational speaker, and you've got a platform for mental health.
I'm a motivational speaker and poet, and I've lived a very unique life. I have all that lived experience when it comes to autism, mental illness, and all the ripple effects that can have, both positive and negative. I was very isolated and suffered tremendously because of that isolation. I had a lot of struggles, but the isolation really exacerbated those struggles. And then at the age of 24, I realized where I was in life, that I was on disability. I was living with my parents, didn't have a job, no girlfriend, no friend at all. And I knew due to my solitude throughout my life that I had a lot to offer. Isolation and solitude is great for looking inward and learning about yourself and observing the world. And so I knew I had a lot of insight to offer. So in my mid 20s, I kind of just decided to try public speaking. I knew I needed to take a risk. Everything was a risk at that point for me, and I had nothing to lose. And I gave my first speech at age 25, and actually feel when I walked up on a stage, I felt more comfortable than I ever had in my life. And then I gave my speech. It was only 10 minutes, and it just kind of took off like a rocket from there. And I never expected it to really be my full-time career. But here I am 5 years later, and it's been a hell of a journey. It's been beautiful. It's been painful, but it's definitely been worth it.
That's amazing. So you actually just went out there and did it. A lot of times we are scared of what we desire most, right? And I think that makes a massive difference for the younger kids too, to know that you were scared of doing it, but you just kind of pushed yourself and said, I can do this. To reach my goals, I need to try at least. And now you're doing it, which is a story of hope, really. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we're all often so afraid of failure, right? But I always say the true failure is in not trying. I mean, you just got to
Exactly.
try.
Yes.
We really have no control over the outcomes in a lot of different things. If you
Yeah.
just try, yeah, you're already succeeding.
And it's really about practice as well, I feel. I mean, I don't like public speaking at all. I even took a class I studied in Utah in America, and I did a class of public speaking. For me, it was just getting on the stage and doing speeches. And then somebody told me, they said that your experience is your own experience and you're the master of that experience. So nobody else knows your story as well as you do.
Mhm.
And it is an interesting story. All of us have interesting stories. So as quickly as you realize that you're the expert of your own life, I feel like that gave me a lot of confidence. And I was like, okay, well, maybe they do want to listen or hear me out at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all about, finding your passion and your purpose that
Mm.
will make you comfortable enough to talk about it. If
Yes.
I had a job where, I had to do presentations on, company data or company progress, I
Mm.
probably wouldn't be as comfortable because that's not my passion, right? But yeah, if you talk about something you are the expert in,
Yeah.
public speaking is a hell of a lot easier because you actually get that validation of you being an expert. People
Mm.
applaud you for your expertise in any area you speak about.
Exactly. I think if anyone asks me anything besides autism, I feel I'm out of my depth. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm pretty comfortable in speaking about neurodiversity in general.
Mhm.
Speaking of, you said you were diagnosed when you were age 12.
Mhm. Yeah.
Was there any change in your life when you received the diagnosis? Did it make sense? Was it positive, negative?
It was very positive in the sense that, I mean, I was struggling since the day I was born. So it took 12 years of going to numerous doctors, neurologists, tests. I spent 5 weeks in a lockdown psychiatric ward, still no diagnosis, all these traumatic experiences.
Mm.
And I had severe OCD, anxiety, depression, panic, phobias. So receiving finally the diagnosis of autism, there was closure. There was like, okay, now we can maybe have a game plan.
Mm.
However, after my diagnosis, my life actually got a lot more difficult because the world then had something to look at me as an other.
Okay.
Autism, right? He's not just a kid who struggles anymore. He's an autistic kid who struggles.
Mhm.
And that separation made me more of an outcast, especially when I tried to assimilate back into society. People back then in the 2000s, late 90s, they would hear autism. And even to this day, you automatically think, oh, autism, that if you don't have autism, that is not me. That is an other. Let me learn about it.
Mm.
However well-intentioned that might be, it still creates a divide, right?
Yes.
And so my life from the societal standpoint got a lot more difficult with the term autism in my life, unfortunately.
Mm. You speak often about your mom. I've watched quite a few of your videos, and you say that she's one of your heroes because she was there with you and she was really helping you throughout. Can you elaborate a little bit on that relationship?
Yeah, my mom it's all about, just being there for somebody. She was never the kind of mom to try to fix things. She never forced me to do anything that I didn't want to do. She was simply there for me. And the Latin root word of compassion, the Latin definition is to suffer with. That's basically
Mm.
what compassion is. And whenever I was suffering, my mom would just suffer with me. She would just be there. She would give me a hug. She'd give me a shoulder to cry on. She'd give me an ear to vent to. She believed in me when no one else did. And that I soon came to believe in myself because belief is contagious. It's all the little simple things that I think we, as parents, I hear often that, you just want to do so much for your child and you never feel like you're doing enough. But
Mm.
it's really the simple things that matter. Too often, parents tend to focus on fixing things, right? But
Mm.
again, it's all about just connecting with your child that's struggling, letting
Mm.
your child know it's okay to struggle. Don't let that struggle define you, but rather look inward and try to find some success through that struggle. And that's exactly what my mom did. It's the
That's
little
so fun.
things that really made me appreciate, obviously her, but life in totality. Because again, that human connection of just having someone there to fall
Mm.
back on. That gave
Yeah,
me the courage to take that risk of public speaking because I knew if it didn't work out, I
she's
had that
there.
shoulder to lean on in my mom.
Mm. I think that's so important because if it's not your mom, there's got to be somebody that supports you throughout these periods of your life. Like you said, the diagnosis, accepting the diagnosis was maybe easier for you than it was for the people around you, at school or wherever. But having that person that you can speak to or just be with. It doesn't even need to be something that they can, like you said, it doesn't need to be something that they need to fix. It just needs to be somebody that holds your hand or sits with you or gets irritated with you, just that understanding. Autism awareness and acceptance has come a long way. We speak about this often. I mean, even myself and Nanette, the other founder of AIMS Global, we've made it our mission to go and speak to autistic adults and younger adolescents too, and finding out what would they have changed in their therapy. There is definitely a divide at the moment. From a professional point of view, I want to open myself up and we want to change our therapeutic modality as much as we can to accommodate autistic individuals and their interests. But, and parents, on the other hand, they're a different population again because they go to a professional like a pediatrician and they receive suggestions and recommendations. And then you get the autistic population, which I feel like we should all work together to provide the best possible therapy and support that you were speaking of to each child when they are diagnosed or even before they are diagnosed. But at the moment, I do feel that there's a division. I don't know if you want to speak about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't even think it's an autism community anymore. I mean, there's just like different communities within the umbrella of the diagnosis of autism. I think again, I mean, there's the autistic adults, which, I don't want to speak for all of them by any means, but there are a few who are very nasty to everybody, basically autism parents, professionals, doctors, service providers, and other autistic adults like me. You know, there's a huge anti-ABA movement, right? You know, I just got a message this morning saying, educate yourself, Russell. ABA is not therapy, it's abuse. And they started talking about, you know, people who have been waterboarded and have had like Clorox shoved down their throats. And I had to respond and say, okay, that you understand that that's not ABA, that is simply abuse. They might have been ABA practitioners, but they weren't practicing ABA, they were abusing. And again, drawing that line of traumatic ABA experiences, we need to draw that line, make a distinction. That is not ABA. That is just a traumatic experience with someone who doesn't know what the hell they're doing. ABA is very beneficial for everybody. We all needed to be members of society. Not one person in society has not had ABA unconsciously or consciously. And then, you know, you got the parents too. Parents are looking for answers. They're just trying their damnedest to try to figure out how to care for their kid. I saw firsthand with my mom waiting 12 years, trying to figure out what the heck to do. And then she got the diagnosis and still was trying to figure out what to do. We need to be, it's funny because the autism, like for me, I need acceptance and understanding from others. But it's funny with a lot of autistic adults in the autism community, they don't give that to others. They expect it. They expect to be understood, accepted, right? They want autism acceptance, but they don't want to accept anybody else. They don't want to hear anybody else out. That message I got this morning started with an insult and it ended with an insult. And it's like, okay, if you want to make a point, make your point. I will talk to you. But if you can't have an open communication and if you're just going to insult me, that leads us backwards, not forwards.
Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to chat to you about as well, is we're all going to have differing opinions. I mean, that's just human nature, right? But the way that we speak about it needs to come from a place where I respect your opinion. I might not agree with it, but I do respect it. Because a bit about my history. So I was trained as an ABA therapist, and Nanette and myself actually moved away from ABA and we created the AIM support system, which, like I said, is in collaboration with autistic adults. I don't believe in the philosophy of trying to change a person or normalize a person. I don't think that should be the philosophy for any therapy. What I do believe in is strategies and consistency of those strategies, specific strategies, such as visual strategies that you can implement throughout the day to make it easier for your kids and for adults, for myself included. So I think that there is a lot of hatred towards ABA at the moment, because we do have autistic advocates, which I think is a wonderful thing. But again, I don't think that you are going to solve any problems by shouting at people, insulting people, and bullying people, because that's what you're fighting against. And then within any war, there will be casualties. So to me, I've never thought that arguing by shouting what you believe in and walking away is a good way to interact with any person. So I do believe that it's a discussion that should continue. And I think that both sides, if you want, have valid arguments. I think that there is definitely room to grow as an ABA therapist. I do think that we were trained. So I've got the other side to this, right? So I know what goes on behind closed doors with ABA therapists. And the way sometimes they do speak of kids where they would say, I can make him talk, or, you know, other things like he needs to do these 10 tasks before he can have like a split second with his reinforcer. Those things frustrate me. And I don't think those are the things that we should be doing with any child or person. I think it's more the philosophy that I don't agree with. I think, and I think the name ABA has gotten a lot of negative and traumatic feelings towards it from autistic adults. But I agree with you. And I also want to add that I don't think that it's the people, usually there are some accounts, but the people that are the loudest and the meanest are not really the ones, if I have to generalize now, that have gone through ABA. So it's, they're taking other people's experiences and they're making it their own. And there are definitely people that are against it, and they've had ABA, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, everybody's voice needs to be heard, right? Um, but the thing is, there's no dialogue going on in the autism community right now, like you said. There are a lot of wrong things with ABA. I'll be the first to say it, like you just said. But again, when we start with these blanket statements of ABA is abuse, where does that leave room for communication, right? There are, just like in any profession, most of my traumatic experiences have come from teachers or doctors, people who were supposed to help me. And I've looked in on RBTs doing ABA therapy. I've looked in on BCBAs having their monthly session with the RBTs. And there's not a whole lot of emotional intelligence. They're so data driven that they forget who they're interacting with is a vulnerable child or vulnerable adult, right? And so, there's a lot of educating that needs to be going on with the service providers. Totally. And I would love to have that conversation with people who are against ABA in totality. But again, there are times where, Carla, I want to give these people who attack me, and I'm probably not going to sound too good saying this, but they have autism, right? So maybe communication they're just, it's one of their deficits, right? But again, we need to learn, like, I'm aware of my deficits. I try every single day to better myself as an individual because I have a very open mind. And the biggest thing I get when I get in, unfortunately, arguments with people who are against ABA or people who are very who are bullying an autism community is they basically, anything you say, they'll disagree with. And I'm not sure where that comes from. I told one person one time that you need to have a little bit of an open mind. And they said, if I had an open mind, my brain would fall out. And it's just, they counteract everything. And I don't want to say they as if I'm talking about all autistic adults. But again, ABA can be used for good and bad, just like anything in life, right? You can use a car to get up to a place, or you can use a car to drive through a crowd of people, right? So it's not the thing itself, it's how do we use the thing for the greater benefit? And that's a discussion I would love to have with people.
And the other thing that's difficult for parents is that not just the fighting going on because they're new in it, right? You've lived being autistic your whole life. I've been in the field now for 16 plus years, and we know that there are all these different sides, and we can kind of choose what we want to listen to. But with parents, it's difficult because they go to a pediatrician who's a specialist, and they get recommended, okay, you need to do 40 hours of therapy. You need to go to an OT. You need to go to a speech therapist. And what are the parents going to do? I mean, they can't. I don't think that we can expect parents to think, I'm going to question that, because, I mean, why would you? You wouldn't question a doctor that much. I mean, nowadays we do, but not that much. But with autism, it feels to me like in this field, the autistic adults are saying, whatever the doctor is saying is wrong, and you should have known this. So this is very difficult for parents, because I see it more and more where they're scared. They're actually scared to come out and speak about their kid, and they need answers. They need support.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I know many autism moms, and a very good friend of mine. She has a 16-year-old with pretty severe autism, and she wants the perspective of the lived experience, but she feels like she can't get that because the minute she asks she's just afraid to even ask questions to the autism community, because she doesn't need any more stress in her life. She doesn't need attacks thrown her way if she happens to ask, what part of ABA do you not like? And then she gets, bullied. And it breaks my heart for not only autism moms, but autism dads. Again, they're new to this. They are trying their best to care for their child. They're probably, like you said, going to listen to the professionals if they recommend ABA. Um, so, people are getting more and more afraid to speak up, and more importantly, they're more afraid to ask questions. And as an
Exactly.
autism parent, if you can't ask questions, that is going to be detrimental for your child. Unless you know your child like the back of your hand, which really no parent does, especially in the early years, it's going to be very difficult to get a broader perspective of what autism encompasses, right? And so again, let's just. I would love to have a roundtable, and I've been thinking about this of people that I disagree with. I love having conversations with people I disagree with. I will literally talk to anybody, but there needs to be respect and open dialogue, right? And that is just non-existent right now, unfortunately.
But it's exactly what you said, because if you can't ask questions, then so first of all, you're too scared to ask questions because you were bullied. So you go to, I mean, just if we try and put ourselves into a mom's shoes, right? You go to a pediatrician. First of all, you notice that your child, there are some delays, or he's a bit different, she's a bit different. So you think, okay, I'm going to go to a pediatrician. You go to a pediatrician, which is expensive. You wait for some parents wait up to 2 years to see a pediatrician. So they push to get into an appointment or get an appointment to see the pediatrician. Get to the appointment. Now they're stressed because of their child. They know that something's up. They don't know what it is. The child might not be as happy. That might be the only sign that the parent sees. And like you say, there might be new parents, there's no sibling to look at. And then the pediatrician gives them the diagnosis, any diagnosis. I'm sorry, I've got ADHD. Any diagnosis is scary at first. You hear it, you're, wait, what do I have now? Or what does my child have now? You start doing research, and it's not always positive. That, usually with any diagnosis, there are some signs that come up, and it's not always positive. But then after that, you go into a support group, you ask a question, and immediately you get bullied and attacked. Now, what does anyone do when they get attacked at first? We don't really fight back. We go into an isolation. So we don't ask those questions. We don't ask, but why is ABA bad? Or what do you not like about ABA? We don't learn. We're afraid to learn. So what would a parent do? They would actually just carry on with their ABA therapy. So they're losing the battle.
Absolutely. It's a lose-lose situation for everybody. Yes. And a lot of parents, especially if their child is newly diagnosed, or even if it's a parent of neurotypical kids who got a diagnosis later in life, or anybody who gets a diagnosis later in life, if the first question they ask, they get bullied from that, they are going to start questioning themselves. Because here's the autism community who's very, experts in autism, and a newly diagnosed person or a mom of a newly diagnosed child or a dad, they ask a question to that community who has all this expertise, and they get bullied from that community. They're going to think, okay, well, they must know what they're talking about. So I must be wrong. And then they start questioning their whole parenting skill set. And again, that's horrible. Parents should never question their skill set, right? They should always want to improve as a parent. But again, so many autism parents I meet ask me simply, am I doing okay? And again, like my heart breaks, yeah, you're doing okay. Don't listen to the noise, right? Listen to your heart.
It's so difficult because not only, yes, we want to be positive about autism. I've met some amazing, all the kids that I work with are amazing. My partner is autistic. We've got some of my best friends are autistic, and they wouldn't change being autistic for anything, right? I was speaking to John Elder Robinson, who's an author, amazing guy as well. And he was saying that, yes, I wouldn't change my autism, but with the autism comes a lot of challenges. So if you have that balance, if you know that this is the reality, okay, so it's not just sunshine and rainbows, whatever that saying is, it is like I struggle to go into a social situation. I struggle to start or initiate and maintain conversations or friendships. But it also makes me a systems thinker. It makes me figure out stuff faster than other people. So there are definitely some pluses. But now, again, we don't want to make it just a positive thing. But if a parent asks questions or they say something like, I wish my kids would speak, they get attacked. And it said, well, you know, you need to be happy that your child is happy. Sure, I'm pretty sure that parent is happy when their child is happy. But which parent wouldn't want their child to say, I love you, mom, thank you, or what, you know, like, you're awesome. And there's, I mean, we can definitely, we will give them an alternative way of communicating for sure. 100%. And IAC devices, one of the first things we do, we teach our kids how to say no. But it's okay for that parent to want their child to expressively verbalize that they love them.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, I love what you said about showing the whole picture of autism. April, being Autism Awareness Month, is one of the most frustrating months for me because it's all about the rainbows and the glitter and the sunshine, unicorns, right? How great, like even when we talk about inclusion in the workplace, you know, people with autism make great employees. They can do this, they can do that, they can do this. But again, if you don't know the struggle that comes with it, if you get a job because unfortunately you have autism and they hire you for your skill set as an autistic individual, if we don't talk about the struggles, how is that employer going to know how to help them, right?
Exactly.
And again, so I love talking about what's not talked about. You know, with autism comes a strong prevalence and likelihood for mental illness and comorbidity. You know, I have 5 mental illnesses along with my autism, and that's not talked about either, the comorbidities. And that makes for a very complex mind. And autism and the mental illnesses that have stemmed from that have been the most devastating thing of my life, and they continue to be. But I love them because I've learned to find my success through that struggle. And we need to start not being as afraid to talk about our struggles.
Exactly.
If you say one thing bad about autism, like I just did, again, if I said that in a room of autistic adults, I'd probably get bullied. Right?
Yeah.
They'd probably say, don't say that about autism. It's a disability. It is. You know, obviously I wouldn't do anything to change it. Disability is not a bad thing, though. So let's get rid of all the negative connotations here. Let's just be real. Autism is a beast. I wake up every morning fighting for my well-being. If I can't talk about that, I'm not going to heal. So let's talk about what's not talked about so we can heal as a community.
And it's so brave of you to say that, because the other thing is also, the more you talk about the negative side of autism, the more you might be bullied, and that feeds into the depression and anxiety and you know, other things that you might be dealing with. So I'm all for speaking up and opening up about other comorbidities, because it is going to help your younger child from a younger age. Again, when I was speaking to John, he was saying, you know, that because we were talking about the interest of a child, like, you know, a lot of parents would say, my child's not interested in anything. And then we would go through different things and try and expand on any interest or show different things and you know, go on outings and so on. But he was saying that it might be depression. So we need to look at that and say, my child might just be depressed because they don't have friends, they are getting bullied, they're getting made fun of perhaps at a young age. You know, kids are not always the nicest. So adults are way better in dealing with differences. We know not to be mean, you know, because it's been indoctrinated with us, which I think shouldn't have been. It should have been an understanding from a very young age. So I do believe that if we can increase the advocacy for autistic individuals, saying that you can ask questions, and we can also increase, obviously, the inclusion of various people in various activities and help our autistic people to find their interest or their passion, like you found it, from a young age, and then boost that self-esteem and confidence, then I believe that we can help our kids develop a better self-esteem so that they might not become depressed or become too anxious.
Exactly. And, again, it goes a lot. Autism is not just the diagnosis itself, it's, again, the ripple effect that it has.
Mm,
The bullying that comes with it, the isolation, the anxiety, the social awkwardness. There's a lot of
mm,
ripple effects and nuances that go with that diagnosis of the symptoms. And again, it's like there's even this kind of trend now for parents who are familiar with autism, if their child gets diagnosed, there's this kind of movement to put that child on a pedestal, to tell the
mm,
child, in order for the child to be better able to cope with it and feel better about themselves, that autism is a superpower.
mm,
But then, once that child starts struggling, if they grow up with the mindset autism is superpower, they're going to question, why am I struggling? And that's going to
mm,
create a bigger rift within their
mm.
healing process, because they're not going to associate the struggle with
So,
autism.
yeah.
So it's detrimental to the child. I can't imagine if, as after my diagnosis, if my mom was not open to the dark side of autism, I would have had to stuff all that down.
Mm,
And that would have been just even worse for me. So again, it's like, let's be real. Autism is a very difficult thing to live with. Does
mm,
it have amazing positive aspects of it? Absolutely. But it's like, again, anything in life. It's all about how we view things, and they're
mm.
two sides of the same coin. The coin is autism, and there's a pleasant side and an unpleasant side.
You just have to be realistic about it, because otherwise you're going to create unexpected hopes and dreams
Yeah,
for the child,
yeah,
and they might not live up to these hopes and dreams if the parent tells everyone that he's got superpowers,
mhm,
and then that might lead into depression and other mental illnesses. And it is not something that is spoken of a lot. It's difficult because I feel like parents want support, or some form of hope from autistic adults. And I
mhm.
feel like if you just give them this gleaming picture of this is what your child can be, that's not a true representation, because everyone still has issues. Not just people on the spectrum, though. I would say that I think that we're all not speaking about our challenges. None of us are. We're all saying, oh no, I mean, if you look at social media, the feed's always happy, I love my life, everything's awesome. But it's not like that. Reality is not like that. We don't ever say, oh, I had a fight with my boyfriend or girlfriend or my child, this. So I do think that there's slowly more of an acceptance of various mental conditions, I think, because people are more open about it, which is a good thing. And it's more accepting now. If you say, oh, okay, I've got ADHD, in the past, it would be like, ooh, okay, wait a minute. She's going to bounce all over the room or something. And now it's more of an accepting thing. And I do feel like I should give credit here to some of the autistic adults that have been speaking about autism so much, and neurodiversity, definitely. I just think that there needs to be some solidarity from all the different groups as well, especially, like you said, the parents need to feel supported more from
Yeah,
all sides.
yeah, and that's one thing. When I was diagnosed with autism, and before and after, I grew up thinking that once I turned 18, life would be easy.
Mm,
I'd be an adult and I would leave my childhood behind, and life would be easy. Obviously, when you become an adult, you have added responsibilities, and life gets a lot more
mm,
difficult. And I wasn't prepared for that. And so, like on my social media, I want to prepare parents of young kids and young kids who follow me on social media. I don't want them to think my life is amazing.
mm,
My life is beautiful. Is it always amazing? Absolutely not. So, I really push myself to see how far I can take the authenticity envelope, because,
mm,
I'll post myself crying, having a meltdown,
mm,
because I want that realistic preparation. We need to be prepared for these child's futures. And while we're
mm,
doing a great job in the workplace with inclusion, with person-centered practices, all that stuff, we're not doing a great job when it comes to how are these individuals going to take care of their mental health as an adult, hopefully living independently. We're not talking about that at all. So if we can talk about more about the struggle, again, we can talk about more about the coping skills that help us through the struggle.
Yeah, that's very important. The coping skills that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And also what you said earlier with just educating the employers as well, saying that yes, they're going to be remarkable, like these individuals, because of the IQ scores or whatever the psychometric scoring that they did before they entered the workplace, they might be phenomenal in areas such as systems thinking or figuring out your different data programs or whatever it is, but they might struggle with certain aspects of the sensory world or the sensory setup. So you might have to move them around or ask them. Also, the way that you provide instructions, it needs to be, visual and written out, and maybe auditory, whatever it is. The reason why I included that story now was I hired somebody autistic that worked as a teacher at one of the schools in South Africa. And she came to me after one of our board meetings and she said, Carla, I like your sense of humor, but can you please leave your jokes until after the board meeting is finished? Because in the board meeting, I'm concentrated on what I should do for the week. And she compartmentalized everything like that. And I really enjoyed hearing that feedback because I was like, okay, I need to do this. This makes sense. And she's actually making me a better manager or, school director, whatever I was. So I feel like we should all learn from each other, but I do think that it needs to be in a caring way. So if I say something wrong as a professional that have dedicated my entire life to autism, please do know that it doesn't, what is my intention? This is what I always ask my clients actually, when they tell me, oh, my mom is being irritating. I'm like, do you feel like the intention of your mother is to irritate you? Because if it is, then that's not cool. And then they'll answer, no, she probably doesn't want to irritate me. And I'm like, okay, well, then there's a different way of communicating to her that she's actually irritating you so that she can stop being irritating to you, not irritating in general. So what is the intention? My intention is to support autistic individuals. I want to learn as much and I want to provide as much care and support as I can. If I say something wrong, if I say a person with autism, or if I say neurodiverse individual instead of neurodivergent individual, cut me some slack. The same goes with an autistic person. If you're an autistic adult and you're dealing with struggles, but you're creating art, you're a poet, you're a speaker, motivational speaker, you support families. And if you want to support a type of therapy, that is your thing and it should be respected. That is your life. It is freedom of speech, right? And the same goes with moms. If they want to ask any question, they should be able to. If we go on neurotypical support groups for parents, they ask stuff like, how many glasses of wine have you guys had today? I've had 7. I can't deal so much shouting. Now, if that was said in a support group for autistic kids, be like, can you please, you shouldn't be drinking, or you shouldn't be saying this about your child. So it's just the standards are very different.
They are. It's almost like, if you have a diagnosis of autism, it's almost like we're saying to parents, you better not screw anything up. You have no room for error. But parents of other kids, we're more flexible with that, which doesn't make any sense because obviously autism is much more complicated than, not having autism. So again, we should be giving more slack to parents of those with autism rather than the other way around.
Yes.
And again, we just lose sight of that. And I personally, the comment I got this morning, I would love to hear her experience, but if you're just going to insult me, I lose interest, I'm not going to want to hear about your experience if you start with an insult. And again, so I really wish I could have a really good conversation with people I disagree with on these topics, because, you know, I want to learn their perspective. That's what life is all about. It's all about broadening our perspectives and harnessing our different points of view into a commonality. But again, it's just not happening.
And learning from each other and then growing together. I mean, it is, if we are standing together, we're stronger. So and it's not us against autism. That again is not what my message is. And I don't think that anyone in this field has come into the field saying, I want to hurt people. You know, we don't come into the field like that. But why we dedicate our lives as professionals to any diagnosis is because we've fallen in love with that population. So I am completely dedicated to my entire life. I'm dedicated to autism and the support of it. And that is from a professional point of view. And the same goes for autistic adults. I don't think that you're doing this to hurt anyone. You're doing this to help and support and educate. Whereas the same goes for parents. They don't have a child to hurt them, you know. So they have a child, they receive a diagnosis and they want to help them. And if we can educate each other together in a respectful manner, I think we're all open to learning. All of us, I feel like.
And, you know, even those that again, like the woman who gave me that comment this morning, her intention is not to hurt me. Nobody in the history of humankind has intended to cause hurt. There's always a root cause that manifests as wanting to hurt, right? So it's not like she woke up this morning and said, I'm going to hurt Russell, right? It's about, again, our intention. She's everybody's, for the most part, well-intentioned in the autism community. It's about how what vehicle do we use to make that intention clear? Because right now, a lot of this intention is not clear. It seems like a lot of people do just want to bully, and maybe very few do, but the vast majority of people who I disagree with want better lives for individuals on the spectrum. And we need to pull all the weeds away and get to that, right? Like, let's stop with the name calling. Let's stop with anti this and pro this, that dualistic viewpoint on everything. And let's just talk human to human. Let's just connect. We don't even have to talk about autism. Let's talk about something we have in common other than autism. And again, nurture a conversation of human connection. I think just connecting on a human level is the way we move the autism community forward, because it seems like the moment you bring up autism, the word,
the fight starts. And it's sad because, again, if you compare this to neurotypical upbringing, I was brought up very differently to my brother. My parents weren't as strict on me as they were on my brother, which is probably not the best thing because I had a lot of leeway to do whatever I want. But my brother was, you know, he needed more control and structure and schedules and those kind of things, which is perfectly fine because he doesn't have a diagnosis. So if he had a diagnosis, that would have been seen as ABA. A lot of it actually, and you know, that would have been seen as abuse right now. So I think we just need to just all calm down for a second and maybe just like have conversations like these and speak to each other and learn from each other again, because I feel like I learn every day. But I'm also scared of saying the wrong thing. So we had to change our website about 7 times, I guess, because we said we work with kids diagnosed with autism. No, we work with autistic kids. No, now back to people diagnosed with ASD, and I can't keep up. I seriously can't keep up, and I've studied this.
and that's not right. I mean, you know, I honestly, I abhor all the terminology. I don't even know what neurodiverse or neurodivergent, or autistic or means. You know, I already came out with it. You know, I really don't care what people call me. And it's frustrating because now other people are telling me how I need to refer to myself.
Yes.
And that is one thing I will not let people get away with. No. I've been to conferences where they say, in your presentation, you have to refer to an individual as autistic individual. That's not how I usually refer to myself, but they're telling me as someone with autism how I can refer to myself. And that's where things, that's where I will speak my mind, because
No,
honestly,
that's
I don't care if I'm neurodivergent. I don't care if I'm neurotypical or atypical. I
mm,
don't care. All I care is that you treat me with respect. That's
mm,
it. And to
exactly.
focus all our energy on terminology has
Mm,
not gotten us anywhere. There's
no,
more terms now than ever, and look, it just creates more divisiveness.
yes.
So just call me a human, call me Russell, see
Mm,
me as a human, treat me with respect. I don't give a damn how what
mm.
you call me, as long as you call me something with respect.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And also, how do parents then get in contact with you if they want, if they're needing some support? Because I feel like they can really get some authentic support from you.
Yeah.
Do they follow you on socials?
Yeah, the
What's the
best, I
best?
mean, obviously social media, I'm all over the place. If you go to my website, it's theautisticpoet.com. Enter, there's a contact form there. I will always respond, and you can find all my social media on my website again. So it's just theautisticpoet.com.
Okay, that's awesome. And I'm so happy that you're into poetry. It's one of my loves too.
Oh God, yeah. When I was in my isolation, poetry became that friend I always desired. Right? It listened to
Mm,
me. I could put my emotions down, and to be able to process. This is very important too with the poetry. Is I would write down how I'm feeling, and then I could visually process my emotions. I could recite the
mm,
poem and auditorily process my emotions. And so it's not just all in my head. I can better process and dissect how I'm feeling, and then again, to be able to create a piece of art out of the struggle, there's really
mm.
nothing more beautiful than that for me.
That's amazing. And that it's, I mean, it's so true, right? Because it's so different for each individual how to get that emotion out and how to self-regulate. And if you found it through something like art, like poetry, then it's so true what you said with the visual representation and the auditory, and it feels like you've actually accomplished something and you have accomplished something and you're just better understanding yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And again, to be able to, um, it gives you again with poetry, it gives me an objective outlook on what I'm dealing with too, because now it's not in my head, it's on a paper, and just that
Mm,
that literal physical separation of it being on paper and me, it gives me more objective outlook when I do recite the poem and or read the poem back to myself, because I realize, oh, maybe I'm taking things a little bit too seriously or something like that. It's
yes.
very healing. And again, if we could use all the energy we use on terminology and anti-ABA and anti-this, we could use
Mm,
that energy to focus on, let's get these kids some outlets. Let's find out what they're
mm,
truly passionate about.
exactly.
That would
That's
be much more efficient.
and that's where the focus should be. It should be on Russell. I've got my child is 12 years old. He's going through these challenges. What do you think we should try out? And then you can provide ideas because you've lived it and you know that you've been through that. And maybe some of your ideas help. Maybe some other person's ideas would help, but that's the conversation, and it doesn't matter how they refer to their child, except in a loving way. But child with autism, autistic child, whatever they want to say. But that's not the problem. The problem is that they're trying to connect with their child and they're trying to help their child, but they're not even getting through the first barrier. So and what you said about art and poetry is so true, because I had a client earlier that I was speaking to, and he's a young man, and he was saying that he's having issues with the way that his parents are speaking to him. And I said, don't say it to them. Try not to say it to them. Try and text them, because it's exactly that. You're putting distance between yourself and the something that is bothering you. And if you're reading it, seeing it from a distance, then it makes all the difference, because it's kind of like you're elated and you're just floating above the issue and you can see it from afar, which I think is a beautiful way of looking at it.
It is, and when I teach advocacy skills to young adults, a lot of people, like I used to be terrified of using my voice, but again, if we can just maybe write a letter to our congressman or something, or congresswoman, just using your voice in very passive ways, right? doesn't have to be explicitly using your voice. Again, it's I often give the same advice you did. Text them, send an email, create that distance. If it's too personal, create some distance.
Yes.
There's many ways to communicate.
Yeah, exactly. And communicating with respect and love is always the way to go.
Absolutely. I know. We as an autism community demand respect and love from the vast majority of the population, and I'm going to demand and respect the love from other people in the autism community that don't agree with me too. From everybody, right?
And I demand it as well, for you and for everyone involved, parents too. Thank you so much for your time. It was such a nice chat, and I know that we're going on a little bit long now, but thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carla, for reaching out and having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and again, a lot of topics that need to be discussed a lot more. So thank you for bringing up those topics.